Hello. This is Marwan Cameron. This is the Conduit. It's Thursday, February 25. The month is almost over. I hope you had a good Thursday. The weekend is rapidly approaching. As you know, I sent out a message to everyone letting you know that we have quite the interview today. Coming up at the top of the hour in just about 15 minutes, we have Commissioner of District 1, Robert Gelder, and Mayor Greg Wheeler. So please, looking forward to that. Join us as they answer the questions that we've been discussing over the last few weeks on our podcast, reflecting on Black history and some of the issues that we face here, not only in our own county, but nationwide. So very excited to have that opportunity to interview those gentlemen. And so it should be a good one. And no, I am not simultaneously broadcasting to YouTube right now. And I'll tell you a story about that. Normally, when we first started, we were doing a simultaneous broadcast from Facebook to YouTube. And for those of you that, know how this process works, what a, just what a task that is for your computer to not only, bring in the video feed from Zoom, inputting it, and then output, the Zoom feed, your own feed, and then push it out to two different platforms and stream simultaneously. And so, that is a challenge, and, everything doesn't always go as planned. So we've decided, let's just go ahead and stream to one platform and just ensure that we'll have the best quality without interruption. And even with that, it still happened because that's just how it is, right? Computers, you know what I'm saying? And I'll tell you something that's really funny. You can become so dependent upon technology and electronics and computing and everything else. There was a kind of a joke back in the day when I was teaching at the college. I was an Android person then, and I've now come over to the dark side, so I'm now an Apple person because of my brother. And I used to have a smartwatch that was an Android version, and so now I've got an Apple version of the smartwatch. And so just being so connected, and some folks would say, man, I just couldn't do that, right? Every text, every alert, every email, task reminders, just everything, constantly buzzing. And for a lot of folks, they're like, that would really be overwhelming. And for me, it's really helpful because it helps for me to kind of juggle and spin all the plates that I'm trying to keep in the air, simultaneously. And so for me, that's pretty helpful. But, you can become dependent on it. And that's exactly what happened for me. So, today we were having some issues with the router. Brand new router, as I said before, that was purchased and installed on Christmas Eve. And, we're having issues, and the thing got like this red ring of death, kind of like the old Xboxes. And so, took that back. And not only today did I not have internet, so my router was gone, but my cell phone was gone also. So you can only imagine for someone who is very dependent on that, man, you talk about going through withdrawals, technology withdrawals. It was tough. And I think I was down for about 2.5 hours or so. No phone calls. No one could reach me. I couldn't reach them. Just really kind of cut off from the world. So that is stressful for sure. But everything is back up now. And so this is going to be our first foray into using the new router, which is more powerful, allegedly. And so we'll see how that goes. So, as I said, it is what it is. You build it while you fly it, and you try to get yourself together as well as possible. And so, as I said, we've got about, 11 minutes before both gentlemen come on. And like I said, it should be a great interview. Just checking in to make sure everything is going all right. We only have a few more days of Black History Month. And as I said before, there's so many folks that responded for participating in the interviews. And do know, I have got your messages. I will be contacting each person kind of as I go down the list. So I haven't forgotten. I'm just a little backlog, but I will catch up. And what I think is important about what we've heard as far as the feedback, folks, saying, it shouldn't be 28 days. It's a shame that it's in February. Black history is American history, is something that should be focused on, all the time or in conjunction with our traditional American history. Well, if that's true, and as I said before, it's all about locus of control. There's no law or rule that says that we have to stop talking about Black history just because it's going to become March 1st on Monday. We can keep going. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I don't want anyone to feel like they're going to miss out because we couldn't get to the interview in the month of February. And I'm very adamant about really trying to make a difference and make a change and not be hamstrung by saying, hey, well, you know what, this is the policy, this is the law, this is how we've always done things. I get there's tradition, right? We can honor and celebrate traditions, but there's other things that I believe can and should change for the better. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with this series and hear from as many people as possible and keep that going. It's really awesome to hear from Pam Murphy yesterday as she spoke about the lady who came before Rosa Parks. And so that's interesting. And so all of this really great information is out there. And so it's up to us to kind of bring that to the surface and bring those ideas to light and have those discussions and hopefully grow together as a people and strengthen our community and make the change and be the change that we want to see. And so, my hope in 2021 is to go beyond being hopeful and really applying what it is that we say that we want and walking the talk, right? Really walking the talk this year is really what it's all about. So if there was a theme, that would be it, walking the talk. So, yeah, we're going to discuss Black history all the way through the year. Reverend Flood, it's good to see you. Reverend Flood says, I agree. We should always be talking about and making history. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. As I said at the top of the hour, we have Commissioner Robert Gelder and Mayor Greg Wheeler. So we'll have a discussion with them about various things in the community. Do know I am reaching out to everyone for interviews and hoping that everyone will be willing to come onto the podcast and have their discussions. I think it's really important during this time, especially while we're social distancing, to find ways to help people to connect and communicate. It's so very isolating. We hear story after story about how our kids are, suffering through anxiety and depression. Their grades are suffering. Their learning is suffering by not being in school with other kids. And, adults go through those same things and can become quite isolated as they social distance and try to stay safe. And so, my hope is that the Conduit has several purposes, but that will be one of the purposes, is to bring us together in a space where we can have discussions, talk, and not be as isolated while we do try to get through this pandemic. And so I think that's really important. So if there's something that you want to talk about or discuss, please just go ahead and message me, and I will actually do a podcast on that because I think it's important. Also, as I said before, we have a few other series where we are looking to talk to our junior high and high school students about how they feel. Again, we often hear, from a national level and from select parents and children as to how they feel about the pandemic and how it affects them and what they think should happen. But locally, it's important for our kids, their voices to be heard, right? And as I said before, there are two sides to everything. And even with that, you can have two things be equal at the same time. So while it is important for kids to be in school and to have all the access that I just kind of talked about and ran down, at the same time, a benefit could be that some relationships with parents and children, caregivers and children, and immediate family and children can also be strengthened during that time. And I kind of shared that experience with creating the Layla and Daddy podcast, right? That was an opportunity for us to figure out what else we could do since we have more time to spend together and kind of enhance our experience and, kind of stimulate her mind and her learning, and then, also grow and strengthen the relationship between a father and daughter. So again, both of those things can be true simultaneously. And I want to really get away from the noise of, the absolutes of, this is what it is and this is bad. And so therefore, that's it. And if you don't agree with it, then I'm against you. That was 2020, 2021 really needs to be different. And so I'm looking forward to pushing forward ahead with other folks that want to champion that with me and really create a change. And, you don't have to be an elected official, as we will have on here soon. But you can be an individual, and you can start in your immediate family. You can start with your friends, and those ripples really do make a difference, right? And if enough people are all rowing in the same direction, we can really make some gains and make some strides. So I encourage you to do that. But if you have a junior high or high school student that would like to come on to the podcast and have that conversation, maybe there's a group of friends that want to come on, we can do it as a group Zoom for different schools or whatever the case may be. Please just reach out to me. The information is scrolling at the bottom, and we will go ahead and get that set up. The other thing that I wanted to do, there's so many things that folks want to talk about, and so I've been asked to create a panel to talk about mental health. Mental health is tremendously important, especially in the Black community and especially for our Black men. It has been stigmatized for so long, and we've made tremendous strides on trying to destigmatize, seeking and using mental health professionals to help us process what's going on and to be healthier versions of ourselves. But there's still a lot of work to do, right? And so we want to have those discussions. And we know during this time, it's so very stressful for so many of us as we go through this pandemic, the economic issues. And for many folks, this might be new struggles for them. But a lot of folks, especially in the Black community, have been facing many struggles pre-COVID. And so the need for mental health was always important and critical, but even more so now. So we want to kind of open up that discussion, have folks come on and help to destigmatize that, provide outlets, resources for help, and just try to be, value added in the Facebook community and on YouTube also. And then we also wanted to have a fathers group where we're talking to fathers in the community and just what they go through from different perspectives. So, you have married fathers, you have myself, who is a non-custodial single father, right? And that could be very isolating. And, you got conflict resolution and how do you go about still being a family unit when that is the situation? What do you do if there's a disagreement, things of that nature? And so, again, we see a lot of things in the mainstream media and some of our more toxic social media outlets on just drama and, kind of ratcheted kind of behaviors. And not everyone is like that. And again, we need to model the behavior that we know is what we want to see. And we know that is positive for the child, for the children, and also for the parents too, right? So we wanted to set up a group doing that and have discussions live, and so folks can benefit. And I think also, the men benefit from that also, just having a space to, have conversations and share of themselves. And as I said, if there's some other things that you would like to talk about, we can absolutely do that. One of my best friends down in Mississippi, she wanted to have a conversation about Black relationships and just kind of relationships period, but that kind of being the focal point. So we're going to do that too. So we can talk about what we want to talk about. We can cut through the noise. We can provide different perspectives that are not mainstream, and as I said, be the change that we want to see. So I see in the waiting room, Commissioner Rob is here. So I'm going to go ahead and admit him because it is the top of the hour. So let me go ahead and do that. Take a sip of my Earl Grey tea, which I love. All right. Commissioner, how you doing? Are you able to hear me?
I am.
How are you doing today, sir?
I'm fine. And yourself?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I'm so glad that you were able to join me.
Well, thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll wait maybe a few seconds before Mayor Wheeler comes on.
So he is able to join us? Okay.
Yeah, so that's what it sounded like from what I read. But in the interim, I was reading your bio, and it said you were from upstate New York. Are you perchance a Buffalo Bills fan like myself?
Yeah, probably not.
Oh, wow. Okay. So who's your team?
Yeah, the Bills were fine, and yeah, I guess if I were still living there, I might be more of a fan. My brother was never a fan. He was a Washington Redskins fan and die hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then I probably never really paid much attention until I got out here and it was Seahawks. So if I had a team, it'd probably be them.
So you're a Seahawks fan?
To be perfectly honest, I don't follow it.
No, I understand for sure. I am a Buffalo Bills fan. And if you know anything about their history, it's very, very sad. So
yeah.
It's pitiful. And I'm not a fair weather fan, and I just kind of just root, even though they lose every year. And folks would tell me they were doing pretty good this year, and they're like, "Oh, God, look at your team." I'm like, "Yeah, yep, heard that one before." And then
now, are you from upstate New York yourself?
Well, I was born in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
And then I was adopted when I was 5, and my dad we lived in Rochester, we lived in Syracuse, and then in the 3rd grade we moved here, and then I've been here ever since. So,
okay.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you anything about Buffalo, but that's where I was born, so that kind of made me a fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all have any number of reasons why we get connected to spaces or places. And I actually probably spent more time in Rochester because I grew up halfway between Rochester and Syracuse.
Got you. Okay.
So a little town called Phelps, right smack dab in the Finger Lakes.
Okay.
The thruway goes right through it. Cuts right through Phelps.
Is that anywhere near Pittsville? Is there like a Pittsville, New York?
There is a Pittsford.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's outside of Rochester, just southeast of Rochester. A little bit further away, probably about, 30 to 40 minutes away if you're kind of going all highway.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I lived there when I was a kid. I just remember riding, remember when the Tonka trucks, the big yellow ones, were just heavy metal? We used to ride those down the hills in Syracuse. It's like one of my last memories of being in New York.
With or without snow?
Yeah, well, without snow. But that was a lot of fun. I don't think they make toys like that now, at least not the Tonka trucks.
Yeah, no, it's probably some liability thing. And, I guess we were a bit more resilient when we were kids, and scrapes and bumps and all that kind of stuff were okay.
But, what's so funny about that is my daughter, she's 9, and she does gymnastics, and she's got her little hoverboard. She's already broken her arm twice, and I just cringe when she's doing backflips and all the stuff that she does. But she's super resilient and just, ultra tough, and Dad is just a big softy now. So it's like, oh, sweetie.
Well, but you've also changed rules. It's one thing if you get the bump or the scrape. It's another if your daughter does. That's a very different
Yeah,
get
we
that
tried
protective
to
instinct comes out.
we tried to talk her out of getting a hoverboard for her birthday this October, and she just was. She did not waver, so it's like you must really want it. So for months and months and
Hmm.
months, that's what it was. It never changed. Like, all right, fine, but she wears a
Is that
helmet.
the one with the single wheel in the middle, or is it one that kind of scissors around?
I think it's the one that kind of scissors around because
Okay.
I don't know if you could do the 360s with the one in the middle.
Yeah, I have no
Yeah,
idea.
I don't know either, but she can.
I'd be sitting down on the ground with either one of them, so that's
Yeah,
not.
I just want to put a big bubble around her and say, okay, now you're all right. So, but
Hmm.
that is her. Well, this is the Conduit. I'm Marwan Cameron. Today, my guest is Commissioner Robert Gelder from District 1. Just a little bit of a bio. We were already talking about you being from upstate New York. You have a long storied history of working in non-for-profit sectors. And
Hmm.
how long have you've been a commissioner? Since 2011? Is that true?
2011, yeah. Actually, I'll have my 10-year anniversary will be next month.
Oh wow! All right. Well, happy anniversary.
Well,
Uh,
thank you.
that's awesome. So how do you become a commissioner? Like what made you want to do that?
Well, for me personally, my my funny answer is that I blame it on my dad. So both of my father and my brother were in law enforcement, and my mother and sister were in education. And so there was always this desire to be involved in the community, do community service. I chose the not-for-profit path, but I always had them as a model. And my dad ended up being a public servant for about 21 years on our school board as well as our town council in New York.
Oh wow,
So
nice.
he kind of set the example. And then when I finally moved to Kitsap, and this was where I decided to put my roots, then it was a great opportunity to kind of get involved and try to give back. And I really think while politics is the means by which you actually get the job,
Mhm.
I truly believe that it's about public service. And I'm hopefully a public servant. And I think it's kind of an extension of being mission driven, part of a mission driven organization. Instead of serving just a few thousand, you're serving, over 250,000. So that's kind of really the focus. And hopefully I have something to give back and something of value for the community.
Well, awesome. We appreciate your dedication to that. We have a pretty wide audience as far as age of folks, and part of the purpose of the Conduit is education. And so, for
Mhm.
folks that may not know, what does a commissioner do?
Well, that's a great question because you're right. There is a huge amount of mystery sometimes when it comes to local government. And especially if you live in a city, it's sort of, well, what's this county animal and how does it work and why should I care?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like a city has different branches of government, right? So you have your executive and your legislative, and they separate that. The council is your legislative body, and the executive is the mayor, depending on your form of city government. There are a couple different forms of county government, and we are under more of the constitutional form, which is a board of 3 county commissioners, and we serve as both the legislative and the executive branches together.
Okay.
So we are the ones that kind of create, change, amend, repeal local ordinances or laws, but we're also charged with implementing them. So we kind of say, okay, from this perspective, we're going to do X, Y, or Z, but on this, wearing this other hat, we work with the departments that report to us to actually implement them. Uh, and so that is really kind of what's unique. And then is another form of county government, actually a new one as of a couple of years ago for populations over 400,000, then which is Spokane County, that triggers the creation of a board of 5
Okay.
county commissioners by district. And then there is also a charter form. So if you're familiar with Pierce, King, Snohomish, and a few other counties, they've created a separation. So they actually have a county executive and a county council. So they've separated that executive and a legislative branch apart.
Oh, awesome. Okay. It's definitely a lot involved. Has it been pretty rewarding? I mean, you're here for a decade, so it sounds like it must be.
It is. I think for me, it's the best job I've ever had. I'm not a person that is, I couldn't do widgets. I couldn't be doing just one thing all the time. That's not the way my mind works. And this has probably been the job where I've had the most diversity of topics and issues day in and day out. And so every half hour or an hour, you're switching gears and going to a different topic. And I find that really engaging. And I kind of have always likened it to like being in college or being in school, where you're going from subject to subject and kind of get to delve into it and get to know it. And over time, year after year, you get a bigger base of knowledge from which to operate. So it's fun. I enjoy it. And hopefully, as long as the people would like me and value the work that I'm doing, and I'm having fun and enjoying the work, then it's really a great opportunity to serve.
Nice. Well, while we're waiting on the mayor to come on, what would you say would be the attributes for our future politicians as far as what they would need to have to be a good commissioner?
That's a great question. Per state law, you just have to be 18 years old, 18 years or older, and registered to vote. And in this case, for a commissioner, you have to live within the district. It's a two-part voting process. So if you had 5 people interested, they all would have to live in the district, and then the district in the primary votes to narrow it down to 2. Gotcha. And then those 2 run countywide in the general election. So there's something to be said. As long as we're in this current form, you've got to live within the district, and that's roughly in north, central, and south.
Okay.
I think that it's really helpful to be someone who is really values being a lifelong learner, someone who is able to absorb different topics and be a critical thinker. You don't necessarily need to have a particular skill set or background coming into it, but hopefully a certain amount of life experience. And it would be really great that someday we have folks of all walks of life that want to get involved and give back. Because right now, if you look at across the board from our cities around the county, as well as the Board of County Commissioners, there's not a lot of diversity.
Gotcha.
We may have some gender diversity, but that's pretty much it. Okay. We have some in Bremerton and Bainbridge Island now. But other than that, I would hope that if you were to kind of have a profile of all the elected officials, and it's harder to kind of get a profile with three people, but if you put all the elected officials from port districts, fire districts, the county, the cities, I would hope that we would have a complement or an array of elected officials that are much more reflective of our community and our diversity.
Well, if you don't mind, then let me ask you this. For those that, they see their ballot, it comes out, for those that are younger that can't vote yet, but, they may not even be thinking about this yet. It's not even on their radar. But what did you have to do, 11 years ago or 12 years ago when you decided, hey, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and run for this? And what was that process like to get started and kind of go through that?
Sure. I mean, I have a different experience, but it probably wouldn't be that different for most folks. There is, not to make it too detailed or too much. So in 2007, then Commissioner Chris Andreessen stepped down. And there was when a position is vacated, these offices are partisan. So when the position is vacated, then the party of the person leaving office has the opportunity to select 3 individuals to move forward for appointment by the remaining 2 county commissioners. Okay. And so I didn't know Adam. I was fairly new. I'd only lived here about 3 years, but I thought, you know what? I want to get involved. I want to make a difference. So I'll throw my hat in the ring, and I applied. Nobody knew me. I didn't have any creds, so to speak, at that point in time. And so I didn't get it, but I got involved. I got involved not only with the party, and sort of getting into that political machine and getting to be known by folks.
Mm-hmm.
But I also got involved with the county and started volunteering. And so got sort of delved into the county budget. They created a budget advisory committee, which was a great opportunity to understand all the different departments, what they do, so on and so forth. So I started to build that credibility. And then when 2011 came around and then Commissioner Steve Bauer stepped down, there was another appointment process. I ran or for the appointment, and I was one of the top three and then selected by the other two commissioners. And then turn around and have to run, because that was just under or just over 2 years into his term.
Mm-hmm.
And so you always kind of inherit the previous term. So I actually had to run that fall to complete the unexpired term and then run again the next year for my own 4-year term.
Gotcha.
So it was this ongoing, it's another part-time job along with learning the work and all that good stuff. But I would say in terms of advice, get involved.
Okay.
I think the challenge we have this day and age, when there's been so much divisive conversation on the federal level, even sometimes on the state level, that it's people kind of retreat sometimes and don't want to get involved. And it's not all, it seems like there's a trend with each party that they kind of are going to their respective sides of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
But most people kind of find themselves more in, they value principles on either side, but they might feel a little bit more in here and don't feel like there's a great connection to make. And so I think that's a challenge for our society as a whole and the political party system that we have. But hopefully folks would want to get involved, volunteer. There's any number of events, there's doorbelling, there's knocking on doors, telling on behalf of a candidate or an issue. It's a great way to get known by the quote unquote organization. And just try to involve, what's your passion? Connect with the community in that way. I mean, the Kitsap County has over 4,000 volunteers. Well, at least pre-COVID we did. Who, volunteer with the park system, volunteer with any number of the sheriff's office, the auditor's office, you name it. There's plenty of ways to plug in. And that could be a great way to kind of understand and learn about the county as an entity and organization.
Well, I love your story, and what's really powerful and encouraging about that is kind of what you said with your story. It's like, look, I was living here 3 years. I wanted to get involved, and I said, hey, why not?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't think that way. It's like, oh, I couldn't do it. It's going to be too hard. I don't know the process. And it's like, yeah, just give it a try. You have nothing to lose. You may have everything to gain, but you'll learn.
Exactly.
Because lifelong learning is really paramount and important. You'll know the process better. You'll understand it. And it probably will change your perspective on things also.
Exactly. And don't give up, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first time, we froze.
No, you're still here.
Can
you hear me? All right. Well, while he is trying to come back online, I am R1 Cameron. This is the Conduit. We are here with Commissioner Robert Gelder from District 1. His computer is frozen right now, but he should be back momentarily. And he is telling a great story on, maybe I'm the one that froze here. So let's see what's going on. But if we are still going as we try to fix this tech situation, I really love what the commissioner was saying about just getting in there and trying, right? Just daring to do that. And, as he was saying with the issues with diversity, I'll speak anecdotally and not from a data set. But there are several folks that I have spoken to and I've talked with and taught, thousands of students and interacted with hundreds and thousands of people throughout the different things that I've done in my life. And that kind of seems to be an ongoing theme for a lot of folks in our community, right? They don't believe that, they can see themselves in that situation. that there are some barriers that they may have, or society has barriers to where they couldn't, you know, try out and get to that point. And I think it's really encouraging to, you know, do just as the commissioner was saying, and go ahead and give it a try, because you don't have anything to lose and you do have everything to gain there. Commissioner, are you back? Can you hear me?
I am. Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was me or you, because you froze, and then I usually get kicked out of the meeting when I don't have enough internet.
Well, you know what? It could have been me. You know, it's technology. You gotta love it. So just say we just ride the wave. That's all we can do.
Exactly. But the other point I was trying to make about the time that it all froze was don't give up.
Don't give up.
Because I think, if I had tried in 2007 and didn't get it, and I said, oh, okay, well, I tried, I'm just going to walk away. No, I mean, that doesn't change anything. You've got to have the perseverance and say, okay, well, what can I do to make myself better? How can I learn more? Well, how can I get engaged? And then just keep at it.
I think that's really powerful. When you didn't get it the first time and you started sitting on boards and getting involved, and then you tried the second time, there has to be some level of kind of getting to know the people in the community. So when you do run, they do know who you are and they're going to vote for you. So what did you have to do to do that?
It was partly getting to know the individuals who were within the party. That was part of it. But then also, right, getting involved in the community, a member of the Poulsbo Rotary Club. I, at that point in time, was serving on the Poulsbo Historical Society board, had been involved with Jewel Box. So just, plugging into the community and trying to just get to have an opportunity to pursue your passions, but at the same time, get to know other folks. And it's still really about making connections in this day that is so digitally focused. People and relationships still make a difference. So somebody, they will then tell somebody about you. And so there's that whole, from a political standpoint, they call it endorsement, right? Or trying to have that connection with someone, because if you can't reach everybody, not everyone can know you, but if you know someone who they know, then it's like, and they support you, then the chances are they say, well, if you believe in them, then I'll believe in them too, or give them a chance, right?
Absolutely.
And so that personal relationship building is crucial.
Would you say it's fair to say that in the interim, while you are sitting on boards and different committees, that you actually can start steering and making change by letting your voice be heard while you're starting to learn? So a lot of folks kind of have that viewpoint of, well, I can't make any change unless I'm sitting in this position. But by getting involved at lower levels, a lot of change actually goes from the bottom up and not from the top down. Is that accurate?
Oh, totally. You can really affect a lot of change just as an individual. One, your vote matters, right? And the ballot, exercise your voice there. But when you get involved in the community, you are, whether it's on a nonprofit board, you help, the universe might be different, right? Depending on how you're getting involved. So you may only shape the future of that organization you're involved with, or in some other capacity. We have all kinds of boards and commissions and advisory groups on the county level that inform how we invest dollars into the community. What programs do we support? What approach do we take to land use decisions? Whether that's the Planning Commission, we have the Parks Board. That what do we do? What's our vision of how do we make investments in open space or other different amenities for the community, and how do we continue to advise and provide that conduit and that feedback to county departments? So it's just, you can shape and make a change in your local community just by being involved and sharing your opinion.
Well, thank you for that. I think that's really important for folks to hear, and to hear from people that are in the position and really kind of drill it down and take away all the mystery of it and say, you know what, it's not as hard as you think it is of getting involved. It's just get involved. Just start doing something and you'll learn, you'll meet people. Oftentimes your interests aren't being even heard if you're not at the table to say what your interests are. So it's really important to do that.
Yeah, what they say, the old adage, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. But it's true. I mean, every elected official has an email. So even if you aren't connected on one of those groups or a board or a commission, but you have a concern in your community, it's just, reach out, because that's how we learn. There's no way, no government has the ability to really, have their finger on the pulse of everything, every street, every pothole, every concern that's out there. So if we don't hear from folks, it's a partnership, really. We are in this together. Our government exists to be able to provide services that you can't provide for yourself or your family or your neighborhood, right? So how do we need to know and hear from you in order to make that the best experience possible.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Well, why don't we dive right into our questions? And
Sure.
The first one is, what does Black History Month mean to you, or Black History period?
Yeah, Black history, I think, I would challenge us to say it's not just about history. It shouldn't be just about looking to the past. And looking to the past is making sure that we take the time to honor all the achievements and everything else in the history and the culture and you name it. But we also have to look to the future. I think for me, it's carving out, and it should be every day, right? It shouldn't be just a month, but we actually take the opportunity to figure out, well, how are we moving forward? How are we building upon the past so that we can continue to move into the future? So my hope is that it's more than a month. It's a state of mind, right? That we have an opportunity to learn from each other. There's gobs of history that we don't necessarily all know. We're not the best. Sometimes when we're in school and we should be paying attention, we either didn't get all the information or we didn't let it sink in. So we need to constantly get better and challenge ourselves, as again, back to that lifelong learning. Let's challenge ourselves and make sure that we have a chance to make better decisions, move together, along together, and keep celebrating regardless of the month.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And one of the things I was doing with the podcast is just kind of sharing some of the, Black inventors and just some of the stories that have happened from our past. And I didn't have that experience. I hated history when I was in school, first off. So, worst subject ever. But then those things weren't taught either, except for kind of the staples, right? Frederick Douglass, Rosa Parks, such and such. And so, just hearing some of the stories and the inventors and how it came to be was just really illuminating. And being older now and just in a different space, now it's interesting, right? But there's even fun stuff for kids, like there was a black man inventing the super soaker, squirt gun. And so,
I
didn't know that, kind of cool.
Like
Yeah. So there's like little fun things too. And, it's just great for all ages and just appropriate. One of the questions
and I think I would also challenge us to think, though, it's not just, there's always going to be those handful or a couple handful of individuals who achieve accomplishments in life and such that their names go down in the quote unquote history book. But each and every one of us are, as long as we're engaged in our community and striving to make a difference, we are creating history, and our efforts should be, celebrated as well.
Absolutely. I was just discussing that in an interview a little while ago. To that end, are there any contemporary folks that you kind of say, hey, you know what, that's pretty awesome in regards to Black history right now?
Oh gosh. I would say we are blessed in our community, whether you you have folks like, Karen Vargas, and the contributions that she's making in our community. And there's just so many that I think we're blessed. And I unfortunately feel that I don't get as much of an opportunity to, work with folks on a day in and day out basis. That's probably partly my fault, but partly the nature of the work that I do. There isn't always that give and take, I should say. But that unto itself we should stop and pause and think, why not? And so the part of the work that the county is going to be doing in the next few months is actually setting up a new, diversity, equity, and inclusion council committee, or something along that line that will actually help us and challenge us in terms of making sure that we are inclusive in our processes and our programs. How do we deliver service? What barriers do we put into place? And that's just something that we need to make sure that we can always do better, right? So let's make sure that we have dozens and dozens of folks that we can just rattle off their names and say that they're making a difference. Because it's too easy, I think, to start talking about actors or singers and so on and so forth. And don't get me wrong, I value those contributions to popular culture and stuff like that, but it's much more meaningful for me is sort of, what are the contributions we're making locally and making our community the best it possibly can be.
Absolutely. And to that end, what I like about, the direction that our local government is taking is you're already doing that here with me. Yeah, I don't think we've met face to face.
No, just Facebook.
Yeah, so this conversation is happening, and by proxy, the folks that will watch it now or watch it later are now having access to you in a way that didn't exist before, right? Or they were thinking that wasn't possible. So, it is really making the change and just kind of, walking the talk, so to speak, Yep. And you're not waiting for an initiative. You're just doing it. So I think it's fantastic.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. I honestly wouldn't have known, right? If you hadn't reached out and wanted to have the conversation, it just would have been a conversation that didn't happen. And I appreciate that. And I think first and foremost, I'm always open for a conversation with anybody. Because I think that I have the opportunity to learn from you. I don't have every perspective. We all grow up with our life experience that kind of creates our proverbial blinders, and kind of narrows our perspective on the world. And the only way that we can kind of broaden that and hopefully continue to evolve spiritually, personally, intellectually, is to make sure that we have those connections and those conversations. If we just surround ourselves with people that are from the same mold, that doesn't change.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You are watching The Conduit with Marwan Cameron. Our guest is Commissioner Robert Gelder, District 1, and we are asking questions. And our next question is, what can be done to reduce homelessness, either nationwide or here locally? Because it's a huge issue. I believe that as the moratorium on rent and other things start to expire, you're going to find more people that are going to be in trouble. Credit card debt, everything else, their rental history. They're going to. I think we're kind of running up against some serious problems that were already here that are just going to be exacerbated as we go forward. What can be done about that?
It's a great question, and one that you could probably do an entire program on, right? So I think there's not one solution to it, because there's no one reason for homelessness. Because it happens for any number. There's so many folks that right now, and I know you sort of proposed another question about the $15 an hour minimum wage, but a living wage makes a big difference. And so many folks live paycheck to paycheck, don't have a savings to fall back on should something bad happen. So many people end up finding themselves caught because of some medical expense that wasn't covered. That gets back to sort of, do we truly have universal health care that can support people in what they need? Are they dealing with mental health and substance abuse issues? Are they, there's any number of reasons why folks are homeless, so you can't have a solution that's only approaches it from one direction. Partly, we've had a trend of any number of things, and just the number of houses that we have and the diversity of housing stock. The pendulum has swung from back a century ago when we were really content in 500 square feet, and we had still a family of 6 or however many were in there, and then we just kept on getting bigger and bigger. And the problem when you average now 3,000 square foot homes, that immediately prices so many people out of the market. They can't afford it. So we need to try to find a way to incentivize the creation of more housing, of a whole variety of housing stock. So hopefully there's a price point for everyone to be part of it. And not everyone's going to be a homeowner, but we need to make sure that we have the rental market as well that can support that level of diversity and income. You take that too, we also need, on the flip side, is we also need to have adequate programs to be able to pull people in who want to come in. I think there's always going to be a segment of our population who are just more comfortable, for whatever the reason is, to be outside. And they aren't ready to be housed or rehomed. But we have any number of folks that have barriers because of loss of job or medical, or you name it, that let's have the space to bring them in and get them housed, because once you put a roof over their head, they're much more capable of dealing with those other barriers in their lives.
Absolutely.
So we have to get to the point where we have more round the clock kind of a navigation centers where people don't have, it's not from 7 p.m. at night to 7 in the morning, but it's a place where they can feel like they're grounded and then get connected to services. So it's a bit of housing, it's a bit of social services, and getting people on that trajectory back to being rehoused. But that's a lot of capacity. We need to have a way of creating that capacity in our community. So the private market we can help incentivize them to develop and build that spectrum of housing, but it's really not going to be the private market that's going to create the other piece of it. It's really kind of falling to the public sector, the governments to do that. The challenge is the funding to make it happen.
Got you.
So one of the conversations I hope that our community has in the next year or so, that I get that it's a regressive tax, but there is an opportunity for a sales tax upon the vote of the people that would actually create an annual stream for the creation of affordable housing. And that would also be for shelters and ultimately the entire spectrum. I think that's a conversation we have to have, because without some means of funding it, there's no way of creating it.
Right.
Because we can plan till the day's well gone, and the cow jumps over the moon, or whatever you want to say. We can plan and plan for planning's sake, but unless we have the resources to do it, we're not going to bend that needle at all.
So with and I get what you're saying, needing the resources. So in the interim, are you able to speak to what the county is currently doing to try to make inroads currently?
Certainly. A couple of fronts. One, we last year, when we had the CARES Act funding, we actually pushed out money for rental assistance. And there were some programs at that point in time that allowed for mortgage assistance. We are continuing that. We just received from the program of the relief package that was passed in December. We were able to get, because our population is over 200,000, so we were able to get a direct distribution from the U.S. Treasury.
Are you talking about the ERAP program? I kind of lost you there for a second. Hopefully we still have Commissioner with us. make sure we're all good here. Oh, you are listening to The Conduit, and we are having a few technical difficulties here. As we reconnect, we will keep the broadcast going. Right now, this is Commissioner Robert Gelder, District 1 in Bremerton, discussing what is currently going on in Bremerton. And in our county, the funds that he is talking about, I believe, are the ERAP funds, which Gather Together, Grow Together, actually participate in helping get the word out to our disadvantaged populations, especially our Black community, that these funds were available because they weren't getting, they weren't penetrating into the disadvantaged populations and at the rate that they should. And so, the government tapped on some of the organizations to help get that word out. And so I believe that is what the commissioner is referring to, which I think is awesome. And to hear that those funds are coming back, I think is great. So I'm looking forward to hearing exactly, what funds, how many funds, when those funds may be available. So I'm going to ask all of those questions as it comes in. And we are reconnecting now with Commissioner. And he will be coming back online here very shortly. All right. So I do hope that this has been informative to you thus far as we continue on with our interview with Commissioner Robert Gelder. Again, really good stuff here. Tremendously important. Sorry there, I think we lost you again. Let me go ahead and unmute myself. Sorry about that, Commissioner. Seems like we lost you again.
I don't know which end it's happening on, but it just
we just got to ride the wave, that's
exactly.
It. So you just grin and bear and smile through it. The funds you were talking about, was that part of the ERAP, the Eviction Rental Assistance Program?
Yes, there's any number of different buckets, so to speak. What we recently received is not the ERAP. That's this is kind of the next. They come up with too many acronyms for it, but it's another version of it, right?
Oh, okay.
And so but the flexibility that it's allowing this time around is to allow for landlords to plug in on behalf of their tenants.
Oh, fantastic.
As well as dealing with some utility assistance as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so we'll be working with Kitsap Community Resources again, because they're pretty much all set up to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be able to assist with both the utility as well as the rental piece of it, and then Housing Kitsap as well. Yeah, so at least if
we were one of the minority nonprofit organizations that they tapped on to help get the word out and help folks process their ERAP. So very excited to hear that this is coming back in a different form. Can you state again how much money is coming into the county?
$8.2 million has been received by us. So we're now ready to get it pushed out into the community. So we're finalizing contracts with the organizations to get, yes.
That's fantastic news.
Yes, and that's great. And there will probably be some additional, so that was direct to the county, but there will most likely be some other dollars that will come through the state, through the Department of Commerce to the local community as well for the same purpose. And then we have the opportunity, who knows what's going to happen with Congress and the upcoming vote on the next package. The House, I think, is set to vote on Saturday, and then it will go to the Senate. But there may be some additional resources that come to the community that will be able to assist with that, and also small business relief, you name it. So that's hopefully some more flexibility.
Awesome. So yeah, that's really important. I'm glad that the money's already here, because we were wondering, it's like, okay, we had up until December 31st, and you got to kind of wait for the year to click over, and it's like, all right, what's going to happen? When's going to happen? So that's a great windfall for the county, and that's going to be tremendous for homeowners and renters alike, because both sides are impacted.
Well, It won't do mortgage assistance, unfortunately. The Treasury has sort of said, no, that's not what it's for. So it's just rental,
Gotcha.
unfortunately. So
Gotcha.
if we can come up with other funding that would provide mortgage relief, then love to pursue that as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, at least it will help the homeowners that are renting their space out and can
Correct.
kind of be made somewhat whole that way. So that's good because those folks are impacted too, and so
Oh yeah,
oftentimes when
definitely.
there's a crisis that's going on, it's naturally to pit people against each other, and it's like, no, we're actually all in this together, and everyone is impacted. So let's be a little open minded about it and.
Well, yeah, there's dominoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
One sort of, it's all interconnected, and it's to have multiple points of contact is a lot more effective than just one.
Right, absolutely. So, the next question was talking about the $15 minimum wage. And what I wanted to present to you was, you had spoke about, livable wages, affordable housing, and what that looks like. And even if the minimum wage was $15 an hour and someone was, lucky enough to have 40 hours a week, that's 600 a week. Times 2 is 1,200. Times
Yeah.
4 weeks is 2,400. And you take out 20% for taxes and everything else, they're going to take home about $1,900. And a one
Hmm.
bedroom here is like 1,000 to 1,100. And once you take into account the electricity and the water and their cell phone and their trash and transportation, folks are not only they're not saving money, but they're not making it from month to month in the first place. So,
Yeah.
what can be done? One, I guess, two part. What do you think about the $15 minimum wage here in this county? And then two, how will that work for our citizens and our residents as far as still being being able to maintain even if we approach that?
Yeah, I mean that's a challenging one because when you think about it, minimum wage is not necessarily the same thing as a livable wage, a living wage, right? Um, I think back to it's really the $15 in many ways is just adjusting for inflation. And going back to when I first started my a job during high school, where I was getting $2.83 an hour or something like that. I was living with my parents. That didn't it didn't equate to a whole bunch of stuff, and it wasn't going to provide me the means of providing my own housing or utilities or food or anything like that. Definitely not paying my college loans or you name it. So I think it's the for all intents and purposes it's the floor. It's not the ceiling, right? It's just the bare minimum that most likely someone would have to if they were doing $15 an hour. Chances are they're going to have to be sharing housing in order to make the ends meet and be able to share those expenses. But there really isn't another way of making that stretch. I haven't seen any studies that show that putting it at 15 really causes a loss of jobs. Um, and so I think it's the least we can do, and I hope the state can kind of move us in that way. And it would be great if that actually survives the federal legislation as well, because I think from a federal standpoint, yeah, not all states, not all communities within our states have the same cost of living, but there really should be a base kind of level. And those folks, we kind of get back to that, causes of homelessness. If it's healthcare, I mean, still, even on the exchange, it's not inexpensive if you're having to pay for that yourself and it doesn't come from your employer. So you factor that on there. I just don't know how people would really be able to make that all work. So a minimum of 15 and hopefully someone can really do the analysis to say um, on a state by state or even within our state, what should it be for someone for the sake of dignity and really our desire, sort of that American dream of being able to take care of ourselves and move forward and save for a down payment or even just be able to have that roof over our head. We got to be able to make it all work.
Yeah, absolutely. And not knowing how the process works, I think people will say, government should do this and government should do that. So I won't do that. I'll ask a question. I know typically, many of the funds like our TANF funds and in SNAP benefits are federal. And so through federal, they have to follow federal procedures and mandates and things of that nature. But you did say something that I think is interesting, and something that I've talked about is allowing folks to come together and be under the same dwelling and kind of pool their resources. And federally, that may not be acceptable because of where the money's coming from, but locally, is there anything that can be done, or has any conversations been done on how you might be able to tweak that, or I don't know, make that happen so that, families can kind of come together and exist under the same roof and pool the resources and make it work? Because I think that is, and there's not enough housing, right? There's not enough units anyway. So that seems like a solution.
It seems like a solution, and it's goes back to what's old is new. Back in the day, even when I was growing up, having multi-generational, multifamily households, it was probably a lot more common, especially multi-generational. There's nothing that can be done on the local level to clear those hurdles if there is a funding issue with the federal funds or even the state. We can advocate for changes on the state or federal level, but we don't have the authority as a county. Counties are a subdivision of the state, so we only have the ability to put something into statute or local ordinance that we have been given permission to do. Gotcha. So unfortunately, we're not all powerful. I don't actually even have any authority unto myself. It's bestowed upon a board of county commissioners. So it's 3 people that have the authority and the power. So yeah, it's be more of an advocacy thing, and I would love to learn more, potentially another time, to sort of, what are those barriers to that cohabitation? Because I know from our codes allow, upwards of, 6 different non-related individuals to cohabitate. So, I mean, from that standpoint, the barrier from a local level would be removed. But if there's a reason from a funding standpoint, that's something altogether different.
Right. But I mean, maybe education through, landlords on, saying, hey, this may be a new model of living, and what do we have to do to get folks into these spaces, and, that they know they'll get their rent, and, the property will be taken care of, and, you're housing several people. So, yeah, I think that probably is going to have to be some unique thinking and problem solving on that side, because you are butted up against, federal restrictions on how those funds can be used.
Well, and even, I can't remember the program name, but North Kitsap Fish Line was spearheading a pilot project that was looking to find a match people that were actually and pairing them up with someone that was looking for housing, but it was going to be affordable. They could pay $500 a month for a room and access to the rest of the house. But I think we could do a lot more to kind of fostering that organic type of connection. It's probably tricky because it's almost like dating. You want to make sure that you have some good synergy with the person you're cohabitating with. But I've done it. I did it in college. I did it after college. You share, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the funding, or the source of our funding, really shouldn't be a barrier to that.
And there have been a lot of examples of, like, even in college, a college student staying with an older family, or, an elderly couple, and, they love having a younger person in the house, and, they have someone to cook for, and there's some life in there, and they're able to study and supplement the fixed income of the elderly couple that's in there. And so there are some synergies that can be created. Like you said, it is like dating, but, folks can probably find that way, and it's conflict resolution, setting really good boundaries and ground rules, and just kind of mix and match. And we got to do something. So why not that? Yeah, and I think as a byproduct, it might actually bring more folks together, kind of as a community, also. So yeah, I think that'd be.
And there's even I think recently, it was probably about 2-3 years ago, we amended the county code to sort of allow for quote unquote boarding homes again as another tool. Again, that sort of allowing for non-related individuals to come together, and that's kind of where that magic number of 6 unrelated folks in one house, so that you can actually have a larger home with 5 bedrooms or however many, but I'll make that as an opportunity for folks that can't do the apartment on their own, but collectively can come together and say, let's make it work. And you're right, laying the ground rules early on leads to some success.
I think it's powerful for folks to hear too that, the government is thinking about these things, that, it's not ideas that haven't come across your mind and haven't been discussed at that level. So, oftentimes we can have this viewpoint of government as being up here and out of touch, and no, we actually do think about these things, and there are some things that we can do, some things that we can't. The process is slow, but like you said, advocation is really going to be the way. The more voices that kind of join in and kind of participate and be in solution oriented and problem solving the problems, that's really the way to go.
And that said, government doesn't know everything. So I mean, if there are great ideas out there, share the ideas. You never know what might be able to happen.
Absolutely.
And we're also looking at the acquisition of space for that navigation center, that longer term type of housing, transitional housing for folks that are homeless, but can stay there, get connected with services. And so that's a goal of the county as well, because that's just part of that continuum. And we need to make sure that we have that capacity in the community. And need more than we could replicate it across the county, because ideally we could try to remove some of the transportation barriers. Not everything can be down in the south end. We need to have these services elsewhere also.
Right.
Because folks are connected to their community. If they have the need, they want to be able to be supported in their local.
True story. We are on with Commissioner Robert Gelder, District 1. We're having a fantastic conversation. We're going to go ahead and keep it going. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And so my next question for you is, how do you feel about the vaccine? And, as a secondary question, it was just announced, I think yesterday on the news, that there's now a California variant that might be out there. So we've got 7 U.S. variants. We have 3 coming from the outside. We've got, I think the final approval coming in for Johnson & Johnson. So just kind of what are your thoughts on whole about the vaccine and kind of the direction the county's going in? And
I think the vaccine is an important tool. I have been vaccinated. And it's not because of my age, I'm still young, but I have, ever since last April, I have been working with our quarantine and isolation centers. So I'm working directly with individuals who are COVID positive and making sure that they're in a safe place to be able to be fed and housed if they cannot do that isolation where they live. And a lot of those individuals are homeless. A lot of them live in congregate sort of shared housing situations where they don't have the space to separate. So because of that work on the front line, I was able to get my dose. It was, I think it's important that everyone who should on some levels, because I didn't have side effects. Everyone's different.
I was going to ask you that, because, there's that second shot supposedly is a doozy, and a lot of people are very fearful just from that alone. So your experience, you didn't have that?
I've heard other folks that if, it depends on which vaccine they're getting, generally not on the first one, maybe on the second one. Generally they feel a little blah for a day and then they're back. They could have some other symptoms, but for the most part, the extreme reactions I haven't been hearing about. And what's great is that I opted in for providing information to the CDC. And so initially, right afterward, they would check in daily. How are you feeling? Have you had to stay home from work? All that kind of stuff. And then it went to a weekly monitoring to sort of see, how are you after the fact? And so they're collecting a lot of data to be able to make sure, and it's all anonymous, but they're wanting to make sure that they know kind of how are the vaccines being received, and are there any kind of negative consequences from it, or if so, what's the magnitude of that?
Absolutely.
And
Do
so
you happen to know how many people have been vaccinated in our county, or what percentage of the county's been vaccinated?
I saw that yesterday, and I couldn't tell you off the top of my head right now. But we are actually still in one of the counties leading in the state in
Awesome.
terms of the vaccination rate. So our biggest limiting factor is the availability of vaccines still, because the state gets their allocation from the federal government, direct shipment from the manufacturers. They then determine which providers in which counties get the vaccine from one week to the next. So
Gotcha.
there's not a consistent flow. And so you like try to stand something up and do a clinic, and try to organize and make reservations, or appointments. But you don't know if you can follow through the next week because you may or may not get the vaccine. And so there's still definitely a supply. That demand way out balances the supply side of the chain. And so that's our biggest challenge. Everything I'm hearing from the CDC and other healthcare providers is that the vaccines that are out there are still good against these other variants,
Okay.
because you're building up the immunity. So not only for the wild version that was our first one here in the States, but the subsequent ones as well, because they will still minimize, just like any cold, there's any number of colds out there. It kind of, you will build up immunity, but you may get a mild something. The biggest upside of being vaccinated is that it reduces your chance for a really bad infection and or hospitalization and so on and so forth.
Gotcha.
So if nothing else, it's going to, if you happen to get it, you're going to be in a better position to fight it off and not have as extreme of an experience as you might otherwise.
So I think that's important to state, right? Because I don't think that's stated clearly enough. Like, okay, you get a flu shot, you may still get the flu. It just won't be
Oh,
as
yeah.
bad as it would be if you didn't get the vaccine for the flu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's important to state.
And it also means that just because you get vaccinated doesn't mean the folks around you have been.
Mm-hmm.
So we still need to continue to wear masks. We still need to socially distance. We need to wash our hands. All those other non-pharmaceutical interventions that we've been drilled into our heads for the past several months are still really important, because just because you've been vaccinated doesn't mean that you won't get it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It just may be a milder case, so it doesn't mean you can't spread it.
Gotcha.
And so until we get kind of that quote unquote herd immunity, where there's enough that we as individuals aren't necessarily going to be a spreader, we don't have the opportunity for it to mutate as much or as quickly, then it will continue to sort of go down. But on some level, just like the flu, I think it's here to stay. It's just we're always going to have that next year cocktail or next year's booster of what the shot is, what variants are out there that we see prevalent around the globe,
Mm-hmm.
and then coming up with a new vaccine for that year. And it's just going to be like the flu. So
Gotcha.
instead of one shot each fall, we're going to end up getting two, most likely in the future.
And so one of the things that I hear all the time, is folks that don't want the vaccine or wary of the vaccine or just against whatever it may be. It's like, well, if I have to wear a mask after I get the vaccine, what's the point in getting the vaccine?
Well, because we need enough of us to get the vaccine. We need to get to that tipping point where we get the herd immunity, where there's enough folks in the community that, regardless of the underlying kind of transmission rate of the disease, that we have the ability to fight it off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, yes, masks will still be part of the equation until we get to that point in time. And I would rely on, the medical professionals and the folks that are very familiar with contagious diseases is to say, when is that time the right time?
Gotcha. So it seems like the mainstream media should say, one, you still need to wear a mask because you can still get it, just like the flu. May not be as bad.
Right.
Two, you can still spread it. and then 3 until you get herd immunity. All the first 2 are still kind of active. So those would be the 3 reasons why you would still need to wear a mask.
Yeah.
It seems really simple when it's explained that way, but I know it's a hard thing, and there's a lot of distrust in government and history and everything else. And there's
Sure.
so many
And
different information out there.
yeah, it's, personal freedoms. I mean, we're a country, built on independence of some sort, right? And where you look at the examples of other countries where when they went into the lockdown or they put in certain mandates to do things, their culture is just such that they were like, okay, yep, that's what we're going to do. So they just did it. So a lot more, easy compliance, so to speak. But we're a country of very independent thinkers and free thinking, and sometimes we just say, hey, I don't know about that. I'm gonna think for myself, but you got to take a step back and say, okay, it's not just about me.
Yeah.
And I have plenty of time in my home where I don't have to wear my mask, so I have that balance. And the times that I'm out and I'm close to other people, it's a pretty small fraction of my day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me ask you a fun question.
Mhm.
How do you define friendship? What's a good friend? How do you identify that? What are the qualities?
A good friend is someone who is there regardless, right? They're not a conditional acquaintance that it kind of comes in and out of your life on a infrequent basis. And I also think for me, some of my most special friendships are those ones that I've had for years. And there's just that way when you pick up the phone and you haven't talked in a long time, it just feels like you talked yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something about this connection that you have that makes it really special. And I have to say, there's probably that handful of that type of relationship I have in my life. Um, and and those are really the ones that I value, those really deeply grounded, deeply seated types of relationships, because I think we have any number of acquaintances in our lives. But it's those folks that who can you really open up to and share with, and that aren't don't judge you, and that you can be that in kind of informal counselors for each other. I think that's just, we need that. And I think if nothing else, the past many months have illustrated that all the more. It's not about the volume or the number of friends we have, it's the quality of friends we have.
Mm-hmm. So how would one go about um, gaining friends? Um, how, what could they do? What would be a strategy for them as they go forward? We are listening to The Conduit with Marwan Cameron. Our guest today is Commissioner Robert Gelder from District 1, having a fantastic conversation as we continue on. This is just fantastic. And unfortunately, there are times when there is nothing you can do. And today is one of those days. So while we're having this great, fantastic interview, Comcast is having issues in my area. So what are you going to do, right? If it's not one thing, it's another. And you've got to just, like I said, ride the wave, do the best thing that you can do, and continue forward. But I love the fact that he has made himself available. I think that's great. And so, I hope that the commissioner will be willing to have a conversation with us in the future. I do love how forthcoming and accessible he has been, and open. And I think that goes a long way for what Pam Murphy was saying the other day, one of our interviewees, talking about how to restore trust in our government. And she talked about it would have to probably be a year or more. And I think I definitely could, I see that for sure. and then also they would have to be transparent, and they would have to basically kind of prove themselves over and over and over again. Um, and in order to do that, I think these are the steps that, obviously need to happen. I shouldn't say obviously, but I would say, to me, that's what would need to happen, right? You would need to be accessible to the people so that they could see that you are indeed accessible to folks. And so I found out what it was. I've got someone that's helping me in the background. Comcast is having an outage issue in my area.
Oh no!
So that's what the
Okay.
problem is. I'm like, okay, I do podcasts almost on a daily basis, and it's like, this is pretty insane. So that's what's going on. Thank you for your patience on that.
Oh, no worries.
It's just, like I said, if it's not one thing, it's another. But it's an exercise in emotional intelligence for sure. So you just kind of smile through it. But could you just kind of finish your thought there?
About friendship?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think it's for me. It's not about the number of friends we have, or friends with a small f, but it's really about the quality of the friends that we do have, and that's sort of with the capital F. Because I think those are the folks that that are with you through the years and through thick and thin, and are really help make life special.
Absolutely. If there is a Mr. or a Mrs. Gelder, what makes a good relationship with a significant other?
For me, it's about communication. I think that we all, even when you're in a relationship, you still have we all it's hard to see life from somebody else's eyes. We have our view on the world, but it's being able to step back and sort of set the ego aside a little bit, and be really able to meet people where they're at, and meet your spouse, meet your partner where they are. And for me, that's, hopefully I can listen. Not always do I do it well, but I try, and I think it's being there, it's doing things for others. You show your love and appreciation in different ways. So I think that's really, but communication is what will get you through, because don't stuff stuff down, because it just festers, and it's not a good thing. So just, don't carry the old baggage, just let it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it seems a little strange that I would ask the first questions and then, transition into friendship and relationships. The reason for that is, we're in a state right now where we need to social distance, and we know that our kids are being affected, through sadness and depression and anxiety, and having their separation from their kids, and the strain that happens in the immediate family, all being under the same roof and not having the breaks, and relationships with the spouse or significant other, and the strain on that, and just how important it is that we find different avenues to reach out. Pre-COVID, we were going to shoot a television show for our public access TV channel here in Kitsap County, and then everything shut down, and so we had to figure out what's next, right? We started making hand sanitizer and sewing masks, and then we had to, shutter most of our folks, and we were essential as we do transportation for, Kitsap Mental Health and Salvation Army and everything else, and then, provide food to food insecure community. But at the same time, what we were seeing is, for all of the clients and the people that we serve and all of our volunteers, now they're kind of scattered to the four winds, and you kind of hear from them every now and then, and you've got the anecdotal, and then you also have the data on how people are feeling. And it was like, you know what, you've got to, again, locus of control, do what you can and provide some kind of a network for people to kind of feel connected and come back in, because we don't know how long this is going to go, and start to try to repair the injuries that have been made by having to social distance. And again, for the population that we serve, one of the challenges that folks have is, they might have a bad picker, that the guy, gal that, I always pick the bad boy, or, whatever the case may be. And so hearing the perspective from folks that are in healthy relationships and what they define as being healthy, I think is really important to get from different perspectives also. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. And ultimately it's about respect, right? You have to respect and appreciate and the diversity and all the nuances that person brings, because we are only human, and so we want to respect and be respected in return.
Absolutely. So you are watching The Conduit with Marwan Cameron. Our guest today is Commissioner Robert Gelder, District 1. We do apologize, but Comcast is having an outage right now, so that is why we're going in and out. I will edit this video and string it all together so it makes sense, because we are being lost and kicked off and coming back on. But just a fantastic conversation. We're very appreciative. As we wrap up, what is something that people wouldn't know about you?
Let's see. There could be any number of things. May not know that I've actually run 3 marathons in my day. Although it's been a long time. Let's put it that way. The knees aren't what they used to be. And actually, the first marathon I ran was in Portland, and I got a time that actually qualified me to run the 100th running of the Boston Marathon.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
wow.
I did the Boston Marathon with a group of friends, and it was a blast. But I hate to say that was 1996, so it's been a little while.
Yeah, you know what? I bet that was awesome. I had a close friend of mine just qualified. And I guess there's like a lottery system for the marathon also.
Mm-hmm.
He just made it, and then COVID hit, and so he didn't get to do it. So he's been training and training and training. It's like, man, I'm so sorry, man. That's just got to be brutal.
It is, but you know what? There's almost kind of a little bit of a letdown with the actual race, only because all the hard work is happening, the endurance, and you're pushing yourself so much during the training piece of it that you kind of do it that day, and it's like, okay, it's over with. And it's like, all right, you have to find some way to celebrate the achievement and keep it going
after it's over. Yeah, absolutely. Well, are there any issues or thoughts that you wanted to kind of bring to the table that I didn't talk about?
There are any number of, I think it really depends on where we are each at. I would say that probably the issues, whether it's housing, whether it's connectivity to, medical care, whether there's just angst in getting, appointments for a vaccine. There's so many different issues that seem to be bubbling right up at the surface right now. So I think that I would have to say that everyone that I know that's involved in one aspect or another are just going, 90 miles an hour, and they're so focused on doing the very best they possibly can. And so I guess my thought is to, ask for patience when possible. It's just everyone's trying to do things in a very different way, and my hope is, we learn a lot from this and don't forget it too quickly. We need to make sure that we do it better the next time, because there's every likelihood that there will be a next time. We just don't know what it will be at this point.
Sadly, so true.
Yeah.
Well, definitely want to thank you for, stopping by today and dealing with the technical issues. One of the things I wanted to say that you didn't say was, not only to, be patient, but also that you seem to be very accessible. Like you said, your email is there, and you were encouraging people to reach out to you. You've been very open with us, and again, we just really appreciate that. Look forward to maybe having you come back and talk with us again in the future. Appreciate your work and your commitment and your service for the last 10 years. Happy anniversary to you.
Thank you.
And please stay safe.
I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. And we're going to, give you well wishes and prayers as you continue on and serve the county and do what's best in the best interest for us as citizens. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, that was Robert Gelder, our Commissioner, District 1. We appreciate him stopping by. We have several more interviews to go. So please stay tuned. We will post them. We are going to shutter our last interviews of today just because of what's going on with Comcast. So we don't want to have this continue on. So what I'm going to do is spend that time quality-wise and edit these. I don't know how many times we got cut off, 4 times. I'm going to string them together into one video, and you'll be able to see that on Facebook and YouTube. So again, thank you so much for watching The Conduit with Marwan Cameron, our guest, Robert Gelder. We will see you next time. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.